A visual metaphor is literally something that you see that has more intrinsic meaning than just what it is. A brilliant example of this would be the stairs in Rocky 1. As he runs up the stairs, that journey up something that is physically difficult represents him becoming ready for his final major fight. You can literally use almost any item that we interact with or even that we see to create a metaphor. A boulder blocking our way, or even an ocean in front of us. So one of the most obvious areas that we can create visual metaphors is within set design. A brilliant example of this would be in Anchorman, when we see Ron Perlman inside a phone box. And obviously this phone box turns out to be a visual metaphor for the emotional prison that he's found himself within.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
Visual metaphors within set design is also known as mise-en-scène, or the placement of objects. Well, it's not just the placement, it's also the types of objects used.
I don't hold with signing my boy away to any banker's guardian.
I want you to stop all this nonsense.
The bank's decision on all matters concerning his education is...
The window creates a boundary between his innocence outside playing in the snow, showing how naive he is at that point in his life. It also creates a fantastic frame around him as the child, as he is the center of all of these characters' focus, and they decide his future. Within Squid Game, I believe the use of props as visual metaphors for many of the characters' journeys is one of the biggest reasons that the show has done just so well. One of the areas where the characters traverse from their waiting area, their holding area, to the game is through this myriad of stairs, which is almost puzzle-like. And obviously it's based on a fantastic piece of art, or series of pieces of art, which is meant to throw off our sense of direction, throw off our sense of geography, knowing where things are. So when we look at this space, it is obviously meant to be confusing. And this adds to a sense of anxiety and apprehension before each game, because we don't know where the characters are going to end up. We don't know which room they're going to enter. And because of that, it adds even more tension to an already very, very tense show. It's really interesting to think of an action as a metaphor, but pretty much every action your character does is a representation of their beliefs. In the brilliant Falling Down with
Michael Douglas,
we see a character who continually acts upon his world, and by doing so he actually creates meaning to his actions. The filmmakers obviously have very strong opinions about consumerism and, well, greed. When the character early on in the film visits a small liquor store, all he wants is some change for a phone box. But when the clerk at the liquor store says he must buy something before he's able to get change, it sets off a chain reaction of events which ends in
Michael Douglas
smashing the store up in a very cathartic expression, as I think many of us have felt frustrated at certain systems around us, especially systems of corporate greed. His actions now aren't just smash up the store, they are actions based on a moral, a theme, and an idea underneath it.
Just standing up for my rights as a consumer.
Characters themselves can also be a metaphor. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's go for an extreme example.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
Vampires are such a brilliant metaphor. They literally can represent so many elements of the human psyche, from violence and fear, the fear of mortality and evil, how in which we can represent this driving force, this craving for immortality with evil. It's almost like the original creators of vampires wanted to say that immortality itself is wrong. So how can you go about finding out what visual metaphors are going to work in your film? Well, I believe the key is to take a look at the characters and what are they going through? What are the characters feeling and what do you want the audience to feel in each scene? Now, don't jam-pack your film with millions of visual metaphors because then it's just going to become almost too laden, too heavy with ideas and you're going to lose the audience's attention. Really try to focus on one or two in a scene or across a series of scenes. And maybe even one major visual metaphor that we keep coming back to, almost like a plant and payoff across your entire story. If you are still very confused, or maybe you've got a whole ton of ideas, I would really recommend using the Pixar creative process. So what is the Pixar creative process? Well, quite simply, it's a way of actually coming up with surprising ideas. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a piece of paper. You're going to talk about at the top of the piece of paper, this is what my character is going to feel. And this is how I want my audience to feel whilst watching it. And now you're going to write out 10 ideas. 10, I did say 10. Now the first three ideas probably are going to be the most obvious visual systems to create that feeling for both your character and your audience. But now, the further you go into it, the more you stretch your mind to come up with connections, the more likely you're going to come up with an interesting idea. Bad ideas are not exempt from going on the list. In fact, get them out of your head so you no longer het up on the bad idea. And even if you think in your first idea you found a brilliant idea, still do the 10 because you may be very, very surprised.
Surprise, motherfucker.
I guarantee you, if you take the time to add visual metaphors to your films, they will become more unique and more enjoyable for your audience. If you've ever used any visual metaphors in your films, I'd love to know, what did you do? How did you do it? And do you feel like visual metaphors enhances films? If you want to take your filmmaking to the next level, don't forget to check out my Cinematic Language 101 course up here and down below to help you master your cinematic language.